I am Stephanie. I am 55.
I'm Jen. I am 45.
I'm Christina. I'm 33.
I'm Anna. I'm 32 years old.
Hi, I'm Genyne. I am 49 years old.
Hi, I'm Dominique. I am 46.
I'm Dee Dee. I'm 60 years old.
And I'm Laura. I am 57 years old.
Welcome back to Interwovxn's second season of 2022, featuring conversations centered on sisterhood and, as always, celebrating and supporting women in middle life. We here at Interwoven are excited to exchange support this season with Renaissance Theater Works, founded and led by women, celebrating 30 years of theater by women for everyone, and is the nation's second oldest professional theater dedicated to gender balance. They produce 3 intimate, moving shows per season in Milwaukee's Harbor District. Check out their website at rtw.com. That's r-t-w.com. And find them on social media. Again, that's rtw.com. In today's episode, friends, business partners, and chosen sisters, Genyne and Dominique, share their origin story, owning our wisdom and power to empower the women coming up behind us, and appreciating our connections. Remember to hit subscribe so you can keep coming back, and to visit our website so that you can sign up for our newsletter and access all of our resources. Find us at interwoven.com. That's interwovxn.com.
Hi, I'm Genyne. I am 49 years old. I am a woman that really loves being with people. I think I'm pretty extroverted. I'm confident and enthusiastic most days, but I wake up every morning willing to start over and to give life the best try that I can. I'm a bonus mom and I'm a wife, and I am a middle child. That's me.
Hi, I'm Dominique. I am a 46-year-old recovering attorney who is recently divorced and the mother of 1 adorable fur baby. I am a Taurus and love more than anything traveling to new spaces and meeting new people. I am guided in pretty much every aspect of my life by a deep, deep curiosity.
Hi, Dominique.
Oh, hey, Genyne.
How are you? How was your day?
Oh, child. Listen, it was good. Do you remember how we met? Do you remember how you was looking at me when you met me over at that breakfast place?
Yes, I do remember that, but you probably need to refresh my memory. I definitely remember thinking, who is this weird bird?
Yes, because I think I either had on some Crocs or Birkenstocks and some cut off jean shorts, and I had a bandana on my head. And you were like, huh. In 1998, I started my law school journey, and probably within 36 hours, I knew I didn't want to be at Marquette. I was the only Black woman in my class, and Professor Amira, I went to him. I feel like for some reason, I could really relate to him, or I felt he could relate to me. He told me, he's like, don't quit yet. He's like, I want you to meet up with this girl, Genyne Edwards. She had a very similar experience to you last year. He connected us somehow, and then we met up for breakfast.
Yeah, I remember when he reached out to me and he was like, would you be open to meeting with this student? She's also African American and she feels exactly the way you feel. I remember you coming to me, and similar to you, I had made up my mind, like, I made the biggest mistake of my life. Why did I leave my great life in Houston?
I remember generally what you said, but I remember leaving the conversation and thinking, oh, okay, I feel like at least I can have someone that I can like anchor to so I don't feel so lost. It's amazing how one person can do that for your whole, it's still a sea of non-support, but then like if you just feel like you have a little glimmer of hope in somebody, you can get through it.
Do you remember, how our relationship from there like just started to grow?
I remember you invited me to a party. After that, I was like, oh, she regular, normal. She regular old normal person.
And what I remember about before you coming to the party, I had warned everyone to be on their best behavior. I'm like, look, she does not know you all.
I felt like that period, when I think back to that person, even because I feel so significantly different from that. It's so far from that version of myself. It's hard for me at this point to even relate to how she saw the world. Do you have that?
Mm-hmm. In some ways, when I look at the pictures, that is how I can recall my mindset. who I thought I was at that time. And I think what really stands out, there's a picture I have on, I have a head wrap on. So that was the one thing that for sure at that time, because I was growing out my hair. And that was like a real interesting thing. When I look back on my law school pictures, I was really trying to figure out my identity. I can remember that being like clearly like, okay, I want to be in this space with these people at this law school, but I still very much want to be myself, and trying to figure out how to do that and how to navigate that. But I also remember that time being filled with a lot of excitement, some of that excitement coming from, just meeting people who I thought were kind of like me, right? So I had a whole life that was more of just like my social life and what was going on with me with law school. And then I had like my Milwaukee family. And I also remember that being something that I was trying to navigate, because people don't really understand what that experience is like if they're not going. They just are like happy that you're in law school.
Mm-hmm. You don't even have to have graduated.
Okay, so when I graduated, I don't remember like that transition for you, like that last year, because I wasn't part of that.
I remember going to your office only a couple times. So I felt like early on there was probably like many people in my life, there was a going apart, coming together, going apart as life, unfolded. We were both in such a state of transition. But I remember when your last year of law school, spending a lot of time with you.
But when I think back on that now, I really think about how, like how you don't know yourself, right? You're so insecure and so unsure. Mm-hmm. And I also remember wanting to be like in a relationship. I remember that a lot. But anyway, when you ended up leaving in that long period of time, right? And I remember that being really significant, like you getting married and us being excited about that.
All my friends, I have a picture of a bunch of y'all out in the space between the wedding and the reception. Everybody looks so fine. The finest. Like it was like the height of fineness. I don't know how old, like maybe 30 something, but was fine. And then I was married.
Yes.
And I moved back to Cincinnati for a little bit.
Yeah. How long were you in Cincinnati? What's that?
9 months. Then I went to Afghanistan at the end of 2008.
So what was that like? Just the preparation of getting ready for Afghanistan? Because I remember thinking, why is she doing this? Is she crazy? Like, why does she want to go there? Because I know you were supposed to be going to, was it Africa first? Was the
Liberia. Because I had always wanted to do international work. It just didn't occur to me as anything that was too out of the ordinary. I was just mostly really excited for a new adventure. That's part of my DNA, is that I think life is supposed to be full of adventures. I'm definitely always looking for adventure.
Do you feel like when you went there, do you feel like that changed you?
Mm-hmm. So I didn't know that I had the type of personality that did well in conflict zones, right? So the bombings, the shootings, like that just didn't bother me in a way that it bothered other people. I think, and this is specific, of course, to my career, but also just to the possibility of life. It opened my eyes to this whole different world of how people engage in work. Most people, they have been hopping from country to country for like over a decade just doing this type of work. And I didn't know that existed until I went there. And so I think my biggest takeaway coming back, the world blew up with possibilities. I was just like, all the things are possible. And there's people out here doing all kinds of stuff. So I know I can do all kinds of stuff. And I think I have continued to grow in that because there's a lot of self-doubt. I've held on to that as a way of looking at the world.
Yeah, I can say that I was pretty jealous of that. I think somewhere inside of me, I always thought that I would not be in Milwaukee. I had a real idea of what I thought my life was going to look like. And it looked like I definitely was going to be living in New York City at some point in time. Mm-hmm. And I'm just now, as of recently, giving up on those. And I don't even want to live there anymore, right? Yeah, but back then, I just kept thinking, like, I'm in Milwaukee. And my attempts to try to, like, after law school to leave, it didn't work. So I had that coming out of undergrad where I tried to move and leave. And then I ended up having to come back to Milwaukee in order to be able to move to Houston, because I had to let go of the expectation that it was going to be something, move back to Milwaukee. But after law school, I was really let down when I didn't get the resources that I thought. I applied for a couple programs and I didn't get into them. So it's interesting that you kind of speak of going away and seeing others and knowing that anything is possible and that these opportunities are out there, because I feel like in certain ways, Milwaukee may have dwarfed my idea of what was possible for me. And I've had to fight to keep hope alive, to keep my possibility possibility. And some of that I get through traveling, right? Every time you go somewhere else, you're like, oh, okay, it's not as small as I think, but that's part of the reason why travel is so important to me. That stint in Houston for a few years, that was affirming and good and healthy. And I learned a lot about myself, but it's a little different when you are older.
What do you see as the possibility for this next phase of your life?
Well, some of it is definitely that it is possible for me to return to some of the things that I wanted to do. It just will look different. And so some of it is being willing to walk back down memory lane a bit and explore those same things through a different, I would say, a different understanding of the world. When I look at other people who are constantly still reinventing themselves, 70 or 80 years old, or still like willing to explore, then I'm always like, okay, yeah, I don't have to worry about what it looks like, but just keeping the vision in front of me that I want to do the things I'm passionate about. I don't want to feel stuck. And whenever that stuckness raises its head, it's like, okay, that's not where I need to stay. So I'm pretty much going through that phase right now of coming out of the stuckness, even the stuckness around P3. And I know like we kind of are fast forwarding through the conversation because I'm thinking when we started P3, we were so full of possibility of what we thought it was going to be and just so willing to lean into that. Everything from like our Nicaragua trip, getting excited.
That part, that beginning creation part, is the part of almost anything that I'm most attracted to. I like the beginning creation. I like when the pieces don't yet make sense or you don't know. I think to your point, I've like that stuckness for me comes from going too many rounds on the hamster wheel and it being the same thing. Oh, there was nothing new that round. There was nothing new that round. And then I'm like, oh, okay, then what are we creating? So how are you feeling in your stuckness now?
I'm feeling a bit unstuck, and maybe it's just because I had some really positive conversations today. Very excited about next year turning 50. One, just because of the gratitude that I have, just because there are a lot of, things that have happened in the last couple of years that have grounded me in just a real sense of gratitude and appreciation for life and where my life is, and just realizing I may not have, quote unquote, the dream career, but it's pretty close to it. Just the ability to get up every day and to create something and to have different conversations with people. And I'm pretty much in a lot of I realize there are a lot of people who don't have a lot of control in their life. And I feel like I'm in the seat of control, and that even in adulthood, the passion that I have, I'm still on that pursuit. It's a chance for me to just like keep asking myself the question, like, if money is not an issue, what would I pursue? And then being willing to discuss that with people. And once people hear it, they mirror back to you things that you didn't appreciate about yourself, or that you maybe were also still limiting yourself in ways.
What do you attribute that to? What do you attribute your ability to not let yourself get stuck too long, to like always kind of be reshuffling the deck?
Well, I have to give the African American Leadership Program a lot of credit for that. Going through that process 12 times, a retreat experience where you have to listen to your story and then look at it and examine it. So it's something about just being willing to keep examining life and having a real practice around the question of what does this all mean? That's huge. And I realized how many people, we were talking about that recently, how many people don't have any kind of life practice where they have some muscle built up around just asking themselves tough questions and then asking other people. So I definitely think I built that habit and the muscle through AALP, and having to kind of be forced in the beginning to go through it. And then the excitement of every time there would be a new cohort every year, it's almost just like another opportunity for me to go through the exact same process. So I look forward to that fall period every year. And I realized like during the pandemic, when I didn't have that natural schedule, I just like did it out of habit. And that's when I went through and did all of my inventory. And I didn't even realize that until lately. It really is a muscle.
So it's mind-boggling to me that my friends are in their 40s or 50s. When you think about getting to your 50th year, what have you been thinking about? I don't know if it's memorializing or reflecting. Like, how do you reflect on half a life?
Well, the first thing that came to mind is I had said to someone, like, I wanted to have some way of appreciating people. It showed up more around like the big life lessons, but people who have had like a significant imprint. And I was thinking about that because there are so many people. And I was like, okay, well, I could do something to memorialize 50 people who've had like an imprint. Thinking, I don't even want to limit it to some number.
Sure.
I just want to use it as a chance to really show appreciation for people. I kind of also just think that I want to think about friendship. I think because I've realized, one, that friendship is always a two-way street. And I'm reflecting on my own behavior with my friends and how, like, I've cultivated these deep bonds with people, but I don't want to be stuck in my head about it. I want to be able to lift that up and be a mirror and show it to people that this is what we've created together, like through a bond, through this two-way street. And I know that that's a real gift to have so many friends, and to be able to do that in a way that honors them is pretty big for me. I'm thinking about that too for next year. And some parties. I love a good party. And I want to do some of those grown-up house parties where you come and you just talk and eat. And
We'll see.
so, I mean, we just celebrated 11 years, right? Do you remember what is, I guess, been like most significant about the 11 years? Like, what stands out to you? I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of lessons, but what stands out to you as kind of the biggest lesson from this journey?
There's been so much. I think as P3 has grown, I've grown individually inside of P3. And I feel like our journeys kind of mirror each other a little bit, in that in the beginning, I didn't know what I was doing. I had no idea what I was doing, just like making it up. But inside of that was like a doubt and insecurity, right? And so, like, when that's happening, you don't feel confident. And I think as I became more steeped in the work and then kind of figured out these areas that I had strengths in and got more confident in the work, that kind of tracked my personal journey around myself. So, like, as I got more confident in the work, I was actually growing in confidence and love for myself. And they were two separate journeys, but they were kind of tracking along each other. I think the other thing is, even before P3, we had evolved into and this kind of goes along with what I was just sharing, into a friendship before P3. But how our relationship started was with you really as a mentor. And so I think even coming into P3, I still had this thing where I was like, oh, I want to be like that, like how Genyne does that. The process inside of P3 for me was still being able to like lift up, honor, and appreciate these things about how you walk the world, but really transitioning into like my own authenticity, which has felt really empowering. You can lift up some things as, oh, that can be a model, but you still have to approach it with your own individuality and authenticity.
That's like a huge reflection and insight, because it's hard for me to see the places and spaces I've grown. I can tell that I've grown, but it really has taken primarily the AALP team to try to remind me how I was showing up in the very beginning. I think I used to hide more of just my, like my woundedness, like my places of insecurity or hurt. And I just didn't want anybody to touch that or be around that. But then I can kind of put it aside and just say like, okay, well, I'm jacked up like how we all are. Not only trying to be perfect, but perfect and right and controlling. Those are still aspects of me that's tied to like hurts and from the past and pains from the past. But now I feel like I'm much better on just saying like, okay, just like letting it go. And that's the real aspect, I guess, of vulnerability. I think when you have created really big walls and ways of protecting yourself, the ability to really be vulnerable is a real practice as well. Yeah, that's a practice for me. And it's I don't have to get that even right and be perfect around that. And also looking at you, who I think is pretty transparent and vulnerable, seeing it as a model and really looking at how we all have that. That's kind of been the big lesson inside of P3 for me. I think also just everybody's faking and making it up. That's the biggest lesson. Is like, you as consultants being with people, you realize nobody knows what the hell they're doing. Most everyone is just making it up as they go along, and they're just doing a really good job of packaging it and promoting it.
I went to the roundtable for the Betty Awards.
Mm-hmm.
One of the women was talking about how, especially for the young women, she feels like, she teaches them classical instruments and they play their cultural music, but she was talking about what she feels like her main job is is to plant a seed of greatness in them
Mm-hmm.
very early around their culture, around their gender, around their identity, plant and nurture that seed. And what it made me start thinking of for women of color, for women generally, for women of color, number one, like when I was coming up, at least nobody was planting that seed. And then two, everything in the world was trying to rip that seed out, right? Like everything that would be it the media, be it like these
Mm-hmm.
schools, be like the whole thing, like everything was trying to rip the seed out. As opposed to, for example, white men, that seed is planted early and then everything in the world reinforces it, continues like, of course you can do anything. And so when you shared that, that's what it made me think of, because you're like, we always think everybody else knows what they're doing. And we're like, oh, I'll never be able to. Whereas I think, racially white people, but gender-wise men, they kind of work under the assumption that they can do this shit because they always thought that like, yeah, of course you can do it. And I think women of color especially, and I've been thinking about this week, it's like, number one, what is the damage of not having the seed planted early on? You have to struggle with all that, like be the most educated person in the room, but still struggle with all this self-doubt and all that, a lack of confidence. What does it actually look like, even in our 40s and 50s, to plant those seeds for other women?
Oh, that's really powerful. And I've been really thinking about that as I've been working with younger women and trying to figure out the way to help them see their greatness and to really own the aspects of their authentic identity that they can really embrace. But to your point, sometimes because no one has ever given them any room or permission to do that, it's a lot that you have to try to dig up, right? To really help people see their projection, their personality, how they're not really being authentic. Landmark was extremely transformational for our friendship. The Landmark Forum is a professional development experience, is how I would think they would frame it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just reading the website language. It says Landmark Worldwide is a personal and professional growth training and development company focusing on people achieving success, fulfillment, and greatness.
I get to choose every day who I want to be, and I don't have to live from just one place for the rest of my life. It's okay to reflect on the things that I needed. I truly needed aspects of protection, and I needed that really in high school, because whenever I look back on pictures of myself, I don't know how I made it. Like, I don't know how I was courageous enough to go to school. I had to be really courageous to walk out and speak up and do in spite of, but that's fine, and I needed that for that period of time. But it is completely okay to not choose that every day, and that needs to be a choice. It doesn't need to be like an auto response of still using that same defense mechanism. Or sometimes when I get ready to walk in the room, I exactly need that. But in my relationships with my friends and with my husband, some days I need to put that down. And so for me, that was huge. You carrying all that baggage and trauma into every interaction that you have. And that really does stop you from having the thing that you desire most, which is like closeness and, real relationship.
I think what I realized at some point was much like how I think about all of my family. When I was able to see you in all your greatness and all your flaws, and still like, oh, I love this woman, and having appreciation for the ups and downs, that was like, oh, like this is someone who I have a different type of bond with. And I would say that probably happened inside of our P3 journey, because of course we were working together, and that creates a different dynamic. And so all kinds of stuff comes up. And I remember just going through this journey with myself around, just thinking about our relationship and getting to a place where, number one, I didn't find you so triggering. And number two, it felt like just like zoom out and appreciate you and the relationship for like the gift it is.
Well, because I think I have such a close relationship with my sister, I think that when there's, people talk about unbreakable bonds, and it's a little bit like what you're saying, where you're like, okay, it's hard for me to even fathom what would happen where it would not be, where we would still be in communication. There's like the deep care and concern, and I still kind of look at you like still a little sister. Hey, I want to just watch out for her. I want to make sure she's safe. When people talk about thick and thin, it means that, yeah, it's nothing that's going to move me to the level where I don't feel like we can talk through it. We can get to the other side of it. And it may be through P3, just the experience of having gone even through the pandemic and lost it all. I remember that day when I was just like, so Dom, I think we need to take all of this stuff off our accounts. We need to unhook all of this automatic credit debit action that's coming out of our accounts because we don't know what's going to happen with this pandemic. We don't have a check, but it's not like who are you going through that with except for more than a partner. It's like, okay, it's a sisterhood. I do think that it's important, and I'm really happy that we had this opportunity to really just have this conversation because it's oftentimes you don't really talk about it in that way. And I know that there's a lot of ways that you can say, like, of course I love you, but I do think the idea of sisterhood is all about indefinite. Like you're together, you're together forever.
I was married for 15 years and I still love my ex-husband. But then I think about that this relationship is even longer than that. It's just at some point in your life, you can't recreate that, right? And so there's nobody probably that I am going to meet when I'm 60 that, that I know for the next 40 years. I mean, it just, at some point you can't, the math isn't going to work. And there's something about seeing the iterations of someone and having an appreciation from whence they came. And you can't say that with everybody too. It doesn't matter how I show up in these spaces, in these meetings, that I have like someone that I'm in partnership that knows who I actually am. That's the difference for me.
Yeah, it's because everybody has an idea of you, and the people who you love the most, yeah, they know the real you.
As you age, how would you like to dig deeper into your sisterhood?
I would just really like to continue to be a better friend. I mean, I think when I was saying earlier that that's something I've been reflecting on is the importance of me just like checking in and being more receptive to asking for feedback and demonstrating that I genuinely care, which is really hard for me. I mean, I've been trying to be better about that with my friends. And so I definitely think that digging deeper for me would mean continuing to have a healthy friendship, but trying to find ways to be a better friend and a better partner. So how would you like to dig deeper?
Well, there are two things that come up. The first thing is I feel like we started P3. We were just in different places in our lives, in our growth. What can we create as we've evolved into these more whole human beings? What can be created from the power of that? And then how do we lean into that in support of each other to do that, right? Like, what does that actually look like? I feel like part of what got us to create P3 is because we both were, number one, we were at a point in our lives and we didn't have children where we could lean in. But even when I look across my peer group, there was no one else that would have done that. Again, like this idea of possibility, we still both have that, like a lens of possibility to the world. So that was the first thing that came up for me. And the second thing that came up for me was figuring out how to make more frequent the vulnerable touch points. I feel like because our lives are now mostly work, some personal, and like an intertwine of them both, it's so easy when we're together, unless we're carving out specific time, we're talking about P3, we're talking about projects, we're talking about as we continue our commitment to grow, what does that support look like from me to you and you to me?
Yeah, I do think it was a lot easier when we weren't as busy and it was more intertwined. It felt like it was more time to have fun and do friend things. But it does feel like that's definitely a place where we could deepen.
If there is one thing you could ask of your sister in the next phase, what would it be? So for starters, I really need about $5.2 million.
This is interesting that this is coming up for me. I really could see you leaving, having a whole separate life. Not like something terrible would happen, but just that I wouldn't be connected to you in the same way. I have this real thing around like checking on people, and I'm at people all the time, checking in or calling or, hey, there's like a little bit of a fear that you could just go on and move on to your new life. And it just would be so drastically different. That's one thing. And I guess this next chapter is just like, I do think that we are both growing and evolving, and there's no telling where your passions and work will lead you. And I think we've been really good about having really healthy conversations and clarity around like, yeah, everybody deserves to live their own best life. And there would be no reason I'd be trying to like hold you back or hold you down from that. It would be important to me that as you embark on, in particular, your next chapter, which I really see is like really big and possibly different than it is now, try to be consistent in your rigor around like just checking in.
For me, it's so hard because who knows what the next phase is. So when I'm thinking about that, I think I'm thinking less about what it is externally and more about what it has felt like internally. It's kind of what I said before. It is continuing to have somebody who knows me well, who can help hold up the mirror and like be real. I tend not to like, yeah, you're right. I'm not reaching out, checking on people. That's not my thing. So like the number of people who have known me, who can see me, that's a pretty small number. So I feel like my commitment, especially these past few years, has been around getting completely grounded and showing up as my authentic self. But the support I need to do that is really someone who's in a space of love, continuing to hold the mirror up for me in a way that supports that growth.
So yeah, Dominique, thank you for this wonderful, I guess it was just a good conversation for me. I learned a lot about you.
You did?
Yeah, it's just interesting because there's just always these little small things that are just like another little small inflection. Yeah, thanks for the conversation, Dominique. Have a great evening. So good talking to you.
Thanks, Genyne. It's good talking to you too.
Thanks for joining us today. We invite you to hit subscribe and to keep coming back each week for a new empowering conversation between sisters. We look forward to seeing you at our website, where you'll find our newsletter and other amazing resources. Visit interwoven.com. That's interwovxn.com to sign up today. This show's copyright is October of 2022. We want to thank our sponsors and affiliates, as well as our producers, Teresa Kopak, Rebecca Jankowski, and Jen Gilmore of Soundfort Studios. All original music was created and performed by Colleen Webb.